At 4:30 we resumed our journey along the plain of the Weber River. It is second in importance only to the Bear River. It heads near the latter, and flowing in a devious course toward the northwest, falls into the Great Salt Lake a few miles south of its sister stream, and nearly opposite Fremont's Island. The valley resembles that described in yesterday's diary. It is, however, narrower, and the steep borders, which, if water-washed, would be red like the canyon rocks, are well clothed with grass and herbages. In some places the land is defended by snake fences and zigzags to oppose the depredations of immigrants' cattle upon the wheat, barley, and stunted, straggling corn within. After fording the river and crossing the bottom, we ascended steep banks and passed over a spring of salt water 5 miles from the station, and halted for a few minutes to exchange news with the mail wagon that had left Great Salt Lake City this Friday morning. Followed a rough and rugged tract of land, apparently very trying to the way-worn cattle. Many deaths had taken place at this point, and the dead lay well preserved as the monks of St. Bernard. After a succession of chuck holes, rises, and falls, we fell into the valley of Bachman's Creek. It is a picturesque hollow. At the head is a gateway of red clay through which the stream passes. The sides are also red, and as the glow and glory of the departing day lingered upon the heights, even Artemisia put on airs of bloom and beauty, blushing in contrast with the sharp metallic green of the quaking aspen and the duller verdure of the elder. As the evening closed in, the bottom land became more broken, the path less certain, and the vegetation thicker. The light of the moon, already diminished by the narrowness of the valley, seemed almost to be absorbed by the dark masses of copse and bush. We were not sorry to make at 7:45 the Carson House station at Bachman's Fork. Bachman's Fork, we learned, is a branch of East Canyon Creek, itself a tributary of the Weber River. From the station, an Indian trail leads over the mountains to Provo City. Today we are to pass over the Wasatch, the last and greatest chain of the mountain mass between Fort Bridger and the Great Salt Lake Valley, and, by the aid of St. James of Compostela, who is, I believe, bound over to be the patron of pilgrims in general, to arrive at our destination. So we girt our loins and started after a cup of tea and a biscuit at 7 a.m., under the good guidance of Mr. McCarthy, who after a whiskey-less night looked forward not less than ourselves to the run-in. Following the course of Bachman's Creek, we completed the total number of fordings to 13 in 8 miles. The next 2 miles were along the bed of a watercourse, a complete fumara, through a bush full of tribulus which accompanied us to the end of our journey. Presently the ground became rougher and steeper. We alighted, set our beasts manfully against Big Mountain, which lies about 4 miles from the station. The road bordered upon a wide arroyo, a tumbled bed of block and boulder, with water in places oozing and trickling from the clay walls, from the sandy soil, and from beneath the heaps of rock. Living fountains these, most grateful to the parched traveler. The synclinal slopes of the chasm were grandly wooded with hemlocks, firs, balsam pines, and other varieties of abbeys, some tapering up to the height of 90 feet, with an admirable regularity of form, color, and foliage. The varied hues of the quaking aspen were there, the beech, the dwarf oak, and a thicket of elders and wild roses, while over all the warm autumnal tints already mingled with the bright green of summer. The ascent became more and more rugged. This steep pitch at the end of 1,000 miles of hard work and semi-starvation causes the death of many a wretched animal, and we remarked that the bodies are not inodorous among the mountains as on the prairies. The only animal seen on the line, except a grasshopper, whose creaking wings gave forth an ominous note, was the pretty little chirping squirrel. The trees, however, in places bore the marks of huge talons, which were easily distinguished as the sign of bears. The grizzly does not climb except when young. This was probably the common brown variety. At halfway, the gorge opened out, assuming more the appearance of a valley, and in places for a few rods were dwarf stretches of almost level ground. Toward the pass summit the rise is sharpest. Here we again descended from the wagon, which the 4 mules had work enough to draw, and the total length of its eastern rise was 5 miles. Big Mountain lies 18 miles from the city. The top is a narrow crest, suddenly forming an acute base upon an obtuse angle. From that eyrie, 8,000 feet above sea level, the weary pilgrim first sights his shrine, the object of his long wanderings, hardships, and perils, the happy valley of the Great Salt Lake. The western horizon, when visible, is bounded by a broken wall of light blue mountain, the Oquirrh, whose northernmost bluff buttresses the southern end of the lake, and whose eastern flank sinks in steps and terraces into a river basin, yellow with the sunlit golden corn, and somewhat pink with its carpeting of heath-like moss. In the foreground, a semicircular sweep of hilltop and an inverted arch of rocky wall shuts out all but a few spans of the valley. These heights are rough with a shaggy forest, in some places black-green, in others brownish-red, in others the lightest ash color, based upon a ruddy soil, while a few silvery veins of snow still streak the bare, gray, rocky flanks of the loftiest peak. After a few minutes' delay to stand and gaze, we resumed the footpathway, while the mail wagon, with wheels rough locked, descended what appeared to be an impracticable slope. The summit of the pass was well nigh cleared of timber. The woodman's song informed us that the evil work was still going on, and that we are nearly approaching a large settlement. Thus stripped of their protecting fringes, the mountains are exposed to the heat of summer, that sends forth countless swarms of devastating crickets, grasshoppers, and blue worms, and to the wintry cold that piles up 4 to 6 feet high. The mountain men speak of 30 and 40. The snows drifted by the unbroken force of the winds. The pass from November to February can be traversed by nothing heavier than sleighs, and during the snowstorms even these are stopped. Falling into the gorge of Big Canyon Creek, after a total of 12 hard miles from Bachman's Fork, we reached at 11:30 the station that bears the name of the water near which it is built. We were received by the wife of the proprietor, who was absent at the time of our arrival, and half stifled by the thick dust and the sun which had raised the glass to 103 degrees, we enjoyed copious draught of the cool but rather hard water that trickled down the hill into a trough by the house side. Presently the station master, springing from his light sulky, entered, and was formally introduced to us by Mr. McCarthy as Mr. Ephe Hanks. I had often heard of this individual as one of the old triumvirate of Mormon desperadoes, the other two being Orrin Porter Rockwell and Bill Hickman, as the leader of the dreaded Danite band, and in short, as a model ruffian, the vile villain, as he had been called by anti-Mormon writers, who verily do not try to menager their epithets, was a middle-sized, light-haired, good-looking man with regular features, a pleasant and humorous countenance, and the manly manner of his early sailor life, touched with the rough cordiality of the mountaineer. Frank as a bear hunter is a proverb in these lands. The terrible Ephe began with a facetious allusion to all our new dangers under the roof of a Danite, to which, in similar strain, I made the answer that Danite or Damnite was pretty much the same to me. After dining, we proceeded to make trial of the air cane, to which he took, as I could see by the way he handled it, and by the nod with which he acknowledged the observation, "Almighty convenient sometimes not to make a noise, mister. A great fancy." He told me that he was likely to be in England next year, when he had set the old woman to her work. I suppose my look was somewhat puzzled, for Mrs. Dana graciously explained that every Western wife, even when still, as Mrs. Ephe was, in her teens, commands that venerable title, venerable though somehow not generally coveted. From Big Canyon Creek Station to the city, the driver reckoned, was a distance of 17 miles. We waited till the bright glaring day had somewhat burnt itself out. At noon, heavy clouds came up from the south and southwest, casting a grateful shade and shedding a few drops of rain. After taking friendly leave of the Danite chief, whose cordiality of manner had prepossessed me strongly in his favor, we entered the mail wagon and prepared ourselves for the finale over the westernmost ridge of the stern Wasatch. Twain, of course, had a different impression of the destroying angel, Ephe Hanks. Destroying angels, as I understand it, are Latter-day Saints who are set apart by the Church to conduct permanent disappearances of obnoxious citizens. I had heard a deal about these Mormon destroying angels and the dark and bloody deeds they had done, and when I entered this one's house I had my shudder all ready. But alas, for all our romances, he was nothing but a loud, profane, offensive old blackguard. He was murderous enough, possibly, to fill the bill of a destroyer, but would you have any kind of an angel devoid of dignity? Could you abide an angel in an unclean shirt and no suspenders? Could you respect an angel with a horse laugh and a swagger like a buccaneer? There were other blackguards present, comrades of this one, and there was one person that looked like a gentleman, Heber C. Kimball's son, tall and well-made, 30 years old perhaps. A lot of slatternly women flitted hither and thither in a hurry, with coffee pots, plates of bread, and other appurtenances to supper, and these were said to be the wives of the angel, or some of them at least. And of course they were, for if they had been hired help, they would not have let an angel from above storm and swear at them as he did, let alone one from the place this one hailed from.